You start coming up with this, what it means to have those two experienced safeties, kind of flexibility.
Like just having that experience back there, like guys, kids that play a little bit of football for us here with even and Murphy, it makes a difference back there. Like it's helping some of the younger guys, particularly getting some of those younger linebackers lined up, making the calls, getting the corners on the same page with us. So just got that experience, that leadership back there makes a big difference.
With the defensive line, what kind of improvements do you hope to see this year?
Well, we've got more depth, and I think we've got more competition. We've got one of them healed up, one of them got nicked up here a week or so ago here, so we went ahead of him out there. But again, I think we've got a lot more depth and better competition than we have here in years past. A little bit more athletic. I think we've got a little bit more flexibility where some of our defensive ends can bump in and play the tackle spot, still go out and play the end spot too. So just more numbers and competition.
What kind of impact has Tim Bennett had in moving from safety to corner? Do you think that he's brought kind of a physical nature to that position?
Yeah, he's probably one of the more physical corners out there. He's played safety, he's played corner, he's played nickel. He's a little bit like Heaven. But from a physicality standpoint, that's where he tends to show up a little bit more. Good tackle, good physical kid, and not afraid to hit. Got to get a little bit better, a little sounder in coverage, but things are still working on.
How important is the physical, element to the cornerback position this year? Just because it seems like you guys have had enough time to develop guys' bodies enough to where maybe they can play a little bit stronger.
They are. Some of those guys when they came in, they played young. You look at Michael Hunter when he came in and played as a true freshman 2 years ago. He was probably about 155, 160 pounds. You look at him now, he's about 185. It's just the type of receivers that you see in this league. They're bigger, more physical kids, but you've got small, slight guys out there trying to cover them or trying to get off those type of blocks. They're getting manhandled, whereas now I think physically we start to match up a little bit better.
A guy like Ryan Thompson's a converted safety as well playing corner. Is that part of the whole? Once again,
you'd like to go the other way. You'd like to recruit a corner and bump them into safety. We're going backwards. Safety's bumping them out the corner, but again, just having that flexibility. Probably more suited to be a corner. Again, physically, he's really come on too. You look at a young man that came in here, could barely bench 225, a year ago at this time, and now he's 320, 330 bench press guy. So here's a guy that's really developed himself physically.
What are your impressions of this?
Practice, halfway through preseason camp, heading into the opener. What do you like on defense right now? What are things that still concern you?
Well, I think a lot of things that are still concern us, but I think we've made some strides here this camp. I think really the last couple of days, last few times that we've scrimmaged, I think we're tackling a little bit better, playing a little more physical, we're getting a little bit more confidence, developing a little bit more swag out there on the field. Those are things that got a long ways to go, but I feel like we're starting to develop those types of things. And again, we had just a couple of our linebackers were out early on in camp, so about this song. We have some of the young linebackers that were in there getting the reps in the first scrimmage. It's nice to get some of the older kids back to work.
In fact, you have so many people who play defensive line, including maybe some freshmen, be able to, keep guys fresh and rotate guys.
I would like to think, I would like to think so. Necessarily haven't had that here the last couple of years. I think now where you've got 2, 3 guys you can rotate in at a position, you like to think you'll be able to keep them fresh. I know they're all getting reps in practice. Coach Fabs and Coach Patton do a good job rolling those kids through. So they're keeping them fresh in practice, but they're still getting an awful lot of work. But that makes a difference. You roll 3 deep, the defensive line, where usually you're not going to rotate on the offensive line, but you can roll 3 deep on the defensive line, keep coming after you, keep attacking, keep pressuring the passer. Attacking up front there, you're able to stay a little bit fresh as you go through the fourth quarter.
When you're driving home from here, I'm taking that's not a song that's in your CD player.
I promise you it's not. I promise you it's not. So I have heard it before.
These 2 weeks, what have you learned about your young safeties, Allen and Dutra?
Again, I think I was just real pleased when we began camp, just how far along they were. I think from a conditioning standpoint, just like with their knowledge of the overall scheme. I think as we've gotten into the scrimmages here, I think Antonio's going to put himself in a position that he's going to be competing for a lot of playing time here this fall. And again, I think Chase is going to be a very good football player here. Physically, he just hasn't played the position maybe as long as Antonio has. Whereas I think Chase is a little more of a receiver, a little more of an offensive guy, and kind of spotted on defense. But again, I feel good with his progress. And he's a guy that has a chance to play for us this year. But I think just Antonio, here's a guy that's played defense pretty much his whole life and been a safety his whole life. So I think just having that background and experiences, has helped him maybe project himself a little bit further. But the thing is, Antonio, and even just what really shows up, and just the maturity level, the physicality that he displays when he's on the field. I mean, he's one guy that when he hits you, the ball carrier's going to stop in his tracks. And he's a tough kid. Gets after it pretty good. So that's things we're trying to develop here. He came in with that type of background, so that part's really been encouraging.
More generally, just kind of, where are a lot of those young guys at? Where are a lot of those freshmen and redshirt freshmen at? Maybe fitting into the defense, particularly in places you need them. Defensive tackle, linebacker.
Yeah, Ralph, there was a guy, he was one of the few guys we had a chance to redshirt last year, but I'm glad we were able to get him back for 4 more years. But, I think he started the back end. I think Antonio's put himself in position. He's too deep right now competing for a starting job. I think you look at the linebackers, those guys are all, TJ, of course, being a mid-year guy, I don't even look at him as a true freshman now, but that's really what he is. He's got a chance to be a starter for us. And we had some of the older kids that were nicked up this past week, and all of a sudden you've got Clyde Newton out there, you got Marcus Oliver. Those guys are getting a lot of reps with the ones and the twos. The improvement that they made from day one to this past week's been night and day. Look at the D-line. I think Darius is a young man that's got a chance to help us here this year. David Kenny's been a little bit nicked up. We finally got him back here the last couple of days, so the jury's still out there. But we've got, I think the kids that we brought in that have joined the program here this summer, we've got a lot of guys that are in the 2 deep competing for playing time or starting position.
Anyone else from the D-line nicked up besides Kenny and Cormier?
I think, again, I don't know how much I can share. I think they all seem to be out there. You guys were out there, weren't you? Kind of see us practicing, he's not. But I think, knock on wood, we've been pretty healthy going through camp.
What are your impressions of the secondary right now, just as a unit?
Getting better. Getting a little better. Again, the big thing we keep talking about now is it's just, first scrimmage we're going to too many explosion plays. Plays that could have been held for 5, at most 10-yard gain. If we miss a tackle on the back end, then results in touchdown or a long run. I think the one thing we've got pretty good skill on offense. We've got pretty good speed. You look at Shane Wynn. If you don't get Shane down the open field, you're not going to catch him. We've got a couple other guys like that too that we just don't necessarily have that speed on defense to run those type of kids down if we get behind them. But if we can keep the ball inside and in front, we come up to good tacklers in the open field. We got a chance to be all right.
Is that the biggest thing you think right now?
We got to eliminate explosion plays. Just consistency is the big thing. I think at times if for 4 plays you may play well, 3 plays fitted up well, tackling well, then all of a sudden the 4th play you got a mistake here or there. Like I said, all of a sudden it's an explosion play. That's what we've got to get out of our system. Some of that had to do with, again, we had some young kids in there playing for the first time, and maybe necessarily weren't fitting the ball how they should have, or leveraging the ball how they should have. But again, as we've gotten some of the older kids back, we seem to be a little bit sounder. But again, it still comes down to defense. You got to be able to get off the block, you got to be able to run the football, and you got to be able to tackle. Like our offense does a great job as they get you exposed in space. And again, you've got to be able to make plays in space. They do a great job spreading you out. Some of the athletes are able to get the ball to in space. You get isolated in one-on-one situations. You got to be able to get them to the ground.